Alright guys, this is how we're going to make a graph when given an equation. So today in class we talked about why we know this is going to form a line. It's already actually in standard form, so we can actually make a graph of it and it's going to form a line. First thing you're always going to want to do, we talked about this in class, is you're going to want to solve this equation for y. So I wanted to say y equals, so I'm going to subtract x on both sides. Leaves me with, instead of writing 6 minus x, I'm just going to write negative x plus 6. It's the same thing. And then last, divide both sides by 2. And when I divide this side by 2, I'm going to divide both things by 2. So you have this divided by 2, and you have 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Now, the one thing you want to remember is that negative x over 2, so that's negative 1x. Well, I can just change that to become negative 1/2 times x plus 3. Makes it look a little nicer, and then now I know that I'm multiplying x times negative 1/2, which is the same as taking it and dividing it by 2. Now that I have it solved for y, I'm going to make a little table. The table, you don't have to make a table every time, but it helps me stay organized. So I'm going to have my equation y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3, and then I'm going to have my last column, which is going to be my answer, which is going to be y. Now sometimes they're going to give you a domain, and that means they're going to tell you what x's you have to put in, but if they don't, we're just going to use whatever x's work for us. And I know in this particular problem, I'm going to have to multiply by 1/2. Well, it's negative 1/2, but either way, it's like dividing by 2. So I don't want to pick numbers like 3 or 6 because that can't easily be divided by 2. The rule of thumb when they don't give you the domain is I like to use a negative, 0, and a positive. And 2 is going to work because if I multiply by 2, or multiply by, divide by 2, it's going to come out to be a whole number. Watch. If I do negative 1/2 times the first x, which is negative 2, so you have a negative times the negative, so you get a positive, and 2 divided by 2, or 2 times 1/2 is 1. So positive 1, then plus 3 is 4. And what I would do here is I would just show that I'm doing negative 1/2 times negative 2 plus 3. For the 0, 0 is even easier, because I'm just going to multiply negative 1/2 times 0, anything times 0 is 0, and then add 3, so I get an answer of 3. And the last one, if I take negative 1/2 and multiply by 2 and add 3, so here you get negative 1 plus 3, you get a positive 2. So that's going to give me 3 points to graph. My points are negative 2, 4. I'm just putting the x and the y together. The next point is 0, 3, and the third point will be 2, 2. So now what I'm going to do is just graph them. So negative 2, 4 goes left 2, up 4. Put a point. 0, 3 would be over 0, so up 3, 1, 2, 3. And last 2, 2, 1, 2, and then up 2. And what you're going to notice, like I told you that we knew this was a linear equation, this is definitely going to form a line. So you're going to use your ruler, and you're going to go through the 3 points, hopefully a little better than I'm doing right now. Make sure you have arrows, because lines go on forever. And this red line is actually a visual representation of our original equation, this right here, or this right here. Because all I did from here to here was I changed it so it says y equals, but technically this equation and this equation are the same exact equation. They're just in different forms. This is standard form, and this is a form, well, it's y equals, but it's a form that I'm going to teach you about later. But I know I did it correctly because all 3 points line up and hit a line. And again, there's many different points that are on this line, but these are the 3 that I used to create the line. Let me show you one more time just to make sure you understand it. Here's an equation, and again, this is in standard form, so I want to get it in slope, well, you want to get it to say y equals. So I'm going to, since that is negative 2x, I'm going to add 2x on both sides. That way the 2x will move to the other side. So now I have 3y equals, I'm going to put the 2x first, plus 12. Then I'm going to divide everything by 3. Well, 2x divided by 3, you're really only dividing the numbers. So you have 2/3 times x plus 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so we're going to do what we did last time. I have my x's. I have my equation. I know y is going to equal 2/3 times x plus 4. And I'm going to have my final y. So again, they don't give us a domain here. Sometimes they're going to give you a domain. Here they do not. So since they don't give me a domain, I'm going to use a negative, a 0, and a positive number. But I'm going to remember that I'm going to multiply by 2/3. So we talked about in class, numbers that you can multiply by 2/3 and get a whole number are numbers that are multiples of 3, such as 3, 6, 9, 12, any of those numbers. Well, I might as well use the smallest number, 3. So I'm going to have a negative 3, a 0, and a positive 3. So 2/3 times negative 3 plus 4. So I could use a calculator, but I could also do 2/3 times negative 3 over 1. You end up with negative 6 over 3, which ends up being a negative 2. 0, again, is a lot easier, because 2/3 times 0 is 0. And 0 plus 4 is 4. So far I have 2 points. Now again, you really only need 2 points to draw a line, but I'm just going to do a third point so I make sure I didn't make a mistake on the first 2. Because if I get 2 points like this and a third point like this, that means somewhere I made a mistake, because all 3 points should be on the same line. So 2/3 times 3 plus 4. Again, you could use your calculator, but 2/3 times 3 is really easy because you do 3 over 1. You get 6 over 3, which is 2. So then 2 plus 4 is going to end up with 6. And let me just double check that I did this one right. You know, in fact, going back, I didn't do this one right. Because 2/3 times negative 3 over 1 is equal to a negative 2. I forgot to add the 4. So you have a negative 2 plus 4. So here you actually end up with a positive 2. And I would have figured that out once I graphed it. It would not have been on a line. So now I'm going to graph my 3 points. Negative 3, 2. Left 3. Up 2. 0, 4. And 3, 6. And you can see they're going to form an exact line. So I would use a ruler. Have to use a ruler, but let's just pretend I had a ruler. And I'm going to make sure my line goes past the points. And that is how you graph an equation. Just keep in mind on your homework, they're giving you the domain. So you don't have an option to choose other x values. They're going to tell you what to put in this column. And that's okay. And it just, it takes less thinking for you. But if they didn't tell you, please remember to always use a negative, a 0, and a positive, and then choose wisely. Remember, if you have a fraction, you have to choose something that'll make it easier for yourself to graph whole numbers.